And now we're joined by Greg McElroy, college football analyst. You can find him on Always College Football on McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. But when you look at his Twitter bio, man says dad, husband, Alabama alum. So, Greg, thanks for coming on the show.
No, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, anyone that has kids knows that's the first job. Like 100%. Like,
Yep.
keep those little guys alive, keep those guys running around. We'll be in good shape. Then you take care of your wife as best you can, right? Do whatever you got to do. So yeah, as far as order of importance, that's kind of where things stand with me, my friend. So appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and so you travel all over the place for college football. How do you keep that order together when you're on the road so much?
Well, it's hard, but what's funny is, and it's a little bit like when we were playing, like when the season ends.
Yeah.
In the NFL, unfortunately, and now in college with the advent of the playoff, you don't know exactly when it's going to end. I mean, you'd like to have that date circled. All right, I'm done on January 8th. Right, that's the national championship. Or now, as we move into the 12-team playoff era, hey, I'm done on January 20th. In some cases, it's a touch earlier. In some cases, it's a touch later. But I'll say this. I mean, shoot, man, being a dad's like the greatest thing in the world. And as long as you're traveling, at least what I've experienced, like my kids never get mad that I have to leave. Like they are bummed for sure from time to time. But man, when I'm home, I'm home.
Yeah.
Like that's when I'm home, I'm home. We're focused on that. We're out in the front yard throwing the ball around, hitting off a tee, whatever it is, whatever he wants to do. And my youngest is 2. So we get after it pretty good. But man, it is tricky on the road, especially during the football season, because it can be all consuming if you're trying to stay up on all things college football.
Yeah, and then I guess once your kids start having games, and I notice for me the hardest part is bro missing games,
Yeah.
because I always want to be there. How do you deal with that, and how do you plan to deal with it, being that your youngest is 2?
Well, the amazing thing about my where I live in Birmingham, Alabama. And look, in Birmingham, Sundays are for 2 things. One, it's for church. That goes without saying. So we go to church every Sunday at 10 o'clock. And then the afternoon is for youth sports because they don't have anything on Saturdays.
What?
Yeah, they
Man, in
do not.
California,
You
they try
do
to
not
pile
mess with
everything on
Alabama
Saturday.
and Auburn games. All right, you don't mess with those. So you can mess with the Falcons and with the Cowboys and those. That's fine. You can miss those, but we're not missing Bama. We're not missing Auburn. So I'm actually very lucky. We have all of our youth sports are played on Sundays here for the most part. And then you do have the occasional midweek games as well for some youth sports like youth football. I think they play midweek or on Sundays. So I've been lucky. I don't miss much. I do occasionally miss church depending on how travel works out on Sunday mornings, but for the most part, man, I'm fortunate enough to be there for just about everything. Really, only missed one thing so far that I've really been bummed about, and that was Halloween this past year. I had to miss that. And my 5-year-old, man, it's like Halloween's the Super Bowl. Like I mean, it's the big one, right? So
Yeah.
missing Halloween this year was really disappointing. But we had lots of videos and we got to FaceTime, and that I think has made things a little easier as well.
See, that's why they say it just means more. I wish they did that out here, Greg. Saturdays are for college football. Do whatever you want to do on Sundays.
Yeah. Well, believe me, I mean, there's plenty of NFL fans here too, and I'm sure they don't love it, but college is first. There's no doubt as far as people's priorities in this part of the world, man. College is first, and everything else is secondary.
Now, the next thing in your bio is Alabama alum. So the question is, Greg, why do you, according to Alabama fans, why do you hate Alabama so much?
Well, it's funny because I love my school. I mean, I know you feel the same way about Oregon. Like, you cannot take the 5 years away from me. Like that was the most impressionable, the best experience I had in my life. Like my wife, I met in school. My kids, we still have season tickets. They go to every game at home. So like we love the Tide, love them. But I don't think that sometimes, I think a lot of times people view it through a lens as a player. For example, when we'd get done and we'd play a game on Saturday when I was in Tuscaloosa, we wouldn't come back on Sunday like, man, that was flawless. Hey, we don't have anything to get better at
Yeah.
now. Like, we're good now. Like, we got it. We got exactly what we need. No, you're always trying to think of ways to get better. So I have always approached my job, my profession, with a level of professionalism, or at least I try to, with a level of professionalism. Like, hey, man, here's the silver lining. Like, after a bad game, here's what this team can do better to have better results in the future. After a good game, all right, here's what they maybe didn't do quite as well. And that's the way Coach Saban taught me to live. Like, you're never going to be too high for your highs and too low for your lows. Like, if you can just be steady, you'll be in great shape. So if feels like the sky is falling, here's the silver lining. Here's how you fix it. If it feels like you're on top of the world, all right, well, here's things that you can do maybe a little bit better. And I don't think people always look at it through that lens. It's not critical. It's just the only way I know how to evaluate teams and players. It's the way I was taught to evaluate. So look, we give a ton of credit when credit is due. And I think what's funny is I might say I say 100 things about Alabama. 98% might be really, really positive because 98% of what they do is incredible. Like, they've won 10 games a year for 16 straight years. Like, you can't really nitpick that at all. I mean, the results speak for themselves, but I think people just hang on the 2% of maybe constructive criticism, and people are going to believe what they want to believe, man. Like, that's just, people don't like me. Some people with Alabama don't like me, and that's okay.
Okay,
That's
so why?
that's fine.
So how confusing or mind blowing is it for you when you're sitting here watching Alabama people say, "Why do you hate us so much?" And then you have so much of the American public saying, "Why are you caping for Alabama to be above Texas and above Oregon and in the
Right.
college football playoff?"
I know it's a matter of perspective, right? And I think that's what's beautiful about college football is, like, we love to hate more than we love to love. You know, like, it's
Yep.
always like Oregon's good, but, or Texas is good, but, or Alabama's good, but, that's kind of just, but they're not as good as my team. It's like, they're not as good as your team, not as good as my team, like, whatever it is. Right. So look, people are going to look at it the way they want to look at it. The thing is, I'm young, people still probably remember when I played. People
Yep.
might still remember a specific game, maybe. So I think that I probably, over the course of 10 years doing this now, I've called games in every nook and cranny of the country. I've gotten to see a lot of really cool things. But people really remember me for what I did when I was playing in school, and they remember that still. And so I still think they view me as like an Alabama guy,
Yeah.
which is great. I love that. That's awesome. Like, I'm proud to be an Alabama guy. I'm a proud alum, no doubt about it. We won a national championship there, which is incredibly special to have been a part of a team like that. So I think people still just view me as, like, he played for Saban, he's just protecting his coach. I think they probably look at it that way a little bit. I will be curious now that coach is retired, and Kalen DeBoer is now the head coach at Alabama. Like, if that changes people's perception of how I
Mm.
evaluate the team, I don't know. People have baked in biases all the time. Like, people
Yeah.
assume that we watch it the same way that they watch it. And we do in a lot of ways. Like, I'm gritting my teeth when Bama's having a 4th and 31 in the Iron Bowl. Like, I'm freaking out, like,
Yep.
100%, like, just like everybody else. But, I also think too, like, when I have to view them through the lens of without bias whatsoever, I'm perfectly content doing that. I'm perfectly fine doing that as well. I'm going to treat them just like I treat Ohio State or Michigan or Florida State or TCU or whoever the team might be. I'm going to treat everybody the same. Um, and I think that's the only way that you can adequately do this job, is by treating everybody the same and evaluating them as such.
So I think that that's the only way to do it and be good at your job. But the day that you heard that Coach Saban that he was retiring, where were you and what was that emotion like?
Well, it's funny. So I had heard that there was, some buzz from, his people that he trusts, that, hey, this is probably going to be it. Um, That was really throughout the regular season, maybe a little bit more towards the end of the regular season. And then it kind of went away a little bit. And then he had some coaching vacancies on his staff. So I had heard that he was actively working to fill those vacancies, even up to the last 5 minutes prior to when he shut down. I think he told the team at like 4 o'clock Central Time. And at 3:55, he hung up the phone with an interview of a guy that was looking to maybe be his wide receiver coach. So it kind of threw me off the scent. But for whatever reason that day, I had my suit on all day long, whether it was conscious, subconscious, I don't know. Then my wife can attest. Uh, I got done with work and I usually switch into gym clothes and like get comfortable. Like that's
Yeah.
just as soon as I can get out of a suit, I do. Like I don't like wearing them.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason that day I kept it on and we went to lunch. My wife, and it was the first day of the off season for me. I had returned from Houston for the national championship on the 9th. And the 10th was my first day of the off season. And just for whatever reason, I just kept my suit on, had it on. And I am out over there. My wife's pregnant. And we were looking at some things that she wants for, the nursery. We have 2 boys and now a baby girl coming. So it's like, we need all new stuff, of course.
Exactly. Can't use the same old stuff again.
Yeah, no. We can't use the blue stuff now. When it now has to all be replaced with pink, which is great. I'm excited about it. It's gonna be awesome. But we were looking at some of that stuff, and I look on my phone, and sure enough, text message, coach is retiring. I was like, what? He just interviewed a coach. Like I just heard 10 minutes ago, he's interviewing a coach. What are you talking about? Sure enough, I'm like, is this real? Double check, refresh, Twitter, refresh, all that, and then. Sure enough, go home. I'm on the air within 15 minutes. Good news is I was already suited and booted, like ready to go. But it was weird. I don't know if like God told me something. Hey, be ready for today. It's going to be crazy, but you need to keep your suit on and be ready to roll.
Stay dressed today. So you were in the early days of Nick Saban at Alabama. What's the difference between Coach Saban when you played for him and now?
I don't know if there's a whole lot that's different with him. I just think the players are different. Back in our day, if coach told us to jump, we'd say, all right, how high, right? Like if you want us to jump off a cliff, all right, cool. How do you want us to get there? We never asked the question why. The modern day player is very empowered, which is great. You got no problems with that at all. But the modern day player is very empowered. So I think it requires a different approach from the coaching staff. You have to be a little bit more willing to meet them where they're at. So I think coach has become much more adaptable, much more willing to alter maybe his approach in an effort to best reach the players. Like with us, he never had to do that. Like we were doing it his way or the highway, like as simple as that. Now I think there is a little bit more give and take with him. And that happened over the course of a very long time. So that's his personality. He's still regimented. He still works crazy hard. He's still going to show up at the facility at 7:20 a.m. and leave at 7:20 p.m. And that's going to be the way it was. But he, I think, did a really good job of adapting to the different personalities that the players had. There was only one coach back in the day. And then now I think coach had to be 85 different personalities in order to reach each individual player personally and individually. So I think that's where he's changed a lot. And then we can talk about the on-field stuff as well. Obviously there was a lot of adaptation that he made to, hey, we want to be a ground and pound outfit that plays complementary football. And then, hey, we want to really rely a little more on back to the defense play action. And we have a really good wide receiver in Amari Cooper. And we're going to kind of become a little bit more back to the defense and featuring him starting in 2012. And then in 2014, he hires Lane Kiffin. It's like, all right, we're going to do a little bit more spread. We're going to utilize some quarterback run with Blake Sims at quarterback. And then in 2015, hey, we got a bell cow running back in Derrick Henry. We're going to get into and feed him 330 times this season. Then in 16, he had Jalen Hurts, and he became a little bit back to the quarterback run game. And then Tua Tagovailoa was really good with RPOs. We're going to utilize an RPO style of attack. And then Mac Jones a little bit more like AJ McCarron, like back to the defense, play action. So he really molded and changed philosophically based on what his players could do well.
Yeah.
And that was very different. Every year the team was just a little different because of that. So that's why I think they were super successful, because he never wanted to put his players in a position where they weren't comfortable.
Yeah, and him retiring made a lot of other people uncomfortable because it sent college football into chaos. Washington lost their coach, which led to Arizona losing their coach, San Jose State losing their coach. All of this, like, how much is the movement in college football like causing chaos with the players in college football?
Well, I think that this was a unique year. 3 out of the 4 playoff teams have new head coaches,
Wow.
including Jim Harbaugh, who we didn't talk about there, but he now is going to the NFL. I think it was a little bit unique. We don't usually see movement this late because more often than not, the only reason why you're going to have coaching changes is because a guy underperformed. It was seldom because a guy did great and got promoted to the next level up, whether it's in your sport or the NFL. Now, we have seen some coaches in the past go to the NFL, but we haven't really seen it in the transfer portal era, where the second you shut it down as a coach, retire, go to the NFL, leave your post, next thing you know, you got 30 days where the
Yeah.
players can jump in the portal at any point. So that I think has become very challenging and very different. So this was a bit of a unique year. I don't think this is going to continue, but I do think because of how hard the job is at the college level, we're going to lose more and more really good coaches to the NFL. I just think
Mm.
the quality of life in the NFL from a coaching standpoint is vastly superior to that of college. There's no rules in college. I mean, there are no guardrails. I mean, you literally have to re-recruit your roster almost daily
Yep.
because a guy might have an opportunity. Hey, I jump in the portal, coach. I can get this there, but what can you do for me? And those
Yeah.
conversations are ongoing. So I think
Well,
that has become really tiresome for a lot of coaches, and I feel like the time frame that coaches will be serving in their current roles has shrunk. Now, you might have a guy like Kirby Smart who might coach at Georgia for 30 more years. There's no telling. But I also think too, I mean, he's making $11 million a year. Does he really need
yeah.
$200 million in his bank account? I don't know. And doing some babysitting on top of it and some
Yeah.
things and having constant turnover within his own staff. Like, I just think it's a really hard job.
Oh,
So I think now with the generational wealth that's being created in college football and the avenues that you might have in the NFL and how the NFL is just a little bit easier, I just think the time frame that guys will be sitting in their current position will shrink down over the course of the next however many years.
so that's it. Now that brings me to the next one. So in 2010, Nick Saban was the highest paid college football coach, but now that salary just 14 years later wouldn't even crack the top 25. Then you have athletic directors making more, assistants making more, people leaving for jobs. Like, how much do you think that the business of college football for everybody else is actually impacting how the players see it when they see everybody else making millions and they're saying, oh wait, hold up, maybe I need to try to look out for me when I can't depend on the coach that recruited me to stay here and he's making $5-6 million.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the players have the players have pretty nice flexibility nowadays. To be honest
Yeah.
with you, um, I think the players, I mean, compared to what we had, like yeah, we couldn't even get 3 meals a day, like
Yeah.
I mean, we really only got like 1 meal a day. Like
Yep.
that was kind of tricky. And it's not like we had cost of attendance. I mean, we didn't get $6,000 a semester just for showing up.
Yep.
Um, couple that with NIL. And so to be honest with you, like I think the players are getting a great deal right now compared to the way it was. So there's been progress made. But at the same time, I think that it's just a little bit I think there has to be guardrails. And it doesn't mean I want to take things away from the players at all. It's just, I don't think there should be this cloak of transparency over NIL. Like,
Oh,
we
for
should
sure.
know, like, all right, hey, guess what? Everybody and their brother knows that Justin Herbert in the NFL is making $52 million a year or whatever it is. Everybody knows that Joe Burrow is making $55 million a year. And I think that if they were just to get rid of the and just be more transparent with what guys are making in NIL, it would benefit, I think, in a lot of ways, because right now there's guys that are signing at certain schools and not getting the money they were promised in
Yep.
recruiting, which is really terrifying. I mean, that's awful. And that's happening a lot. So I think if we would just remove the secrecy surrounding it and just, hey, this guy's going to Ohio State, he's getting this. This guy's going to Georgia, he's getting this. This guy's going to Bama, he's getting this. This guy's going to Oregon, he's getting this. Like that, I think it would calm things down a bit because there wouldn't be bad deals that are being done and guys that are being misled. So that's my biggest fear from a player standpoint, is that guys are getting misled and they're getting bad advice. And then
the secrecy. And the
yeah,
secrecy leads to dark alley deals that
totally
don't get held up on both ends.
That scares the heck out of me. I mean, and if you've already transferred once, you sign a bad deal, you don't get the money that you're promised, you can't transfer again. I mean, you're locked in until you graduate. So there are things that I think we could do even more to protect the players. But I don't know if the players want that out as well. Like, they don't want, in the event in which you are making $1 million as a starting quarterback or whatever school, doesn't really matter, and you play poorly, you're going to get crushed even more so than you did back in the day. Like, we got killed and we gained zero. But now if you're making $1 million and you still play bad, you're going to get wore out. So that to me is something that it's a tricky deal. I don't have all the solutions to it at all. I would adjust the calendar first and foremost. I would move all the transfer portal movement into May so that we're not making emotional decisions at the end of the season. As you can go through a spring practice, you can kind of get the sense, even if your coach changes or moves, you can go through a spring practice with your new staff and maybe see, hey, maybe this might work out after all. And then you would use the portal in May to fortify holes in your roster after you evaluated the freshman crop that all signed at the mid-year and got to go through a spring. So like, that's what I've been, my first order of business would be to adjust when the portal would open and how the portal was used.
Yeah. So would you consider that the biggest problem in college football, or the thing that needs to be most urgently fixed?
Well, first of all, I think college football is in a really good spot. I know a lot of people really like to kind of talk about the negatives of college football. And I understand that, like, negativity sells. I get that. And it's not the college football that you grew up with or I grew up with or, my dad grew up with. Like, it's a different college football nowadays, and that's fine. But really what I think we need to remember is that when toe meets leather on Saturday, it's the same game that we've always loved. Whether the guys on the field are getting paid or not, or the guys on the field are there for 1 year, or they're going to portal out right after the year, or maybe they portal out after the game. I don't know. I mean, it's still your team, your helmets, your uniforms going against a team that you might loathe. So I think it's the sport's really, really in a good place right now. And I think we're growing. I really believe this. I think we're growing as a sport because people now can consume the playoff and the postseason format, which turned a lot of people off. The postseason format turned a lot of people off for a lot of years. Now I think people get it and they understand it. So we'll attract more people as a result. But I think our sport's in a really good spot. There's just a couple tweaks I would make to the calendar to just create a little bit more constraints on the recruitment of players off of other teams' rosters. That's the only thing that really makes me uncomfortable is the tampering. And I think the tampering does occur more so in December than it might occur in May when you have a better understanding of what your roster might really look like.
Yeah, for sure. Now we're headed to the 12-team now we're headed to the 12-team playoff, Greg. And it feels like to me that this is the best time for it, because even though that there are still, great teams, it feels like that there's less depth on those teams. So there is going to be more parity. Do you think the expansion is better at this point in time, or do you think that we still should be at 4?
Well, I'll start by saying I don't think there's anything wrong with 4. Um, I think our goal with the college football playoff is to crown a worthy champion.
Yep.
And even when we had a 2-team playoff in the BCS, like we did that, we crowned a worthy champion.
Hold on, Greg. Except for in 2001, when Oregon should have been playing against Miami in the national championship instead of Nebraska, except that year.
Okay, I don't recall Joey Harrington led Oregon Ducks team in 2001. I trust you. I was 13 at the time, and I was a Florida State fan growing up. So like I didn't care. It was what it was. I was just mad that Miami was as good as they were. Back in 01.
For sure.
I remember watching that Nebraska game and it being a beatdown. So I remember that. But whatever. Either way, the goal of the playoff is to crown a worthy champion. I think we've crowned a worthy champion forever. So was a 12-team playoff necessary? I don't think it's necessary, but I do think it's going to open up possibilities for teams that would never have made a 4-team playoff, or that the stars would have to align for them to make the playoff. I like the G5 is probably, at least for the first 2 years, the G5 is going to have a representative every year. I don't know if that's going to continue. I like that if you win your conference, you get in at the moment. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, hey, it's easy for people to consume. Hey, I get it. All right, I won the ACC. I'm in the playoff. Done. Then you have the wild card teams, or the non-automatic qualifiers. That's interesting to me because that will be debated and heavily scrutinized, especially the order, especially the teams that get home games versus the teams that have to go on the road. So I think there's a lot of positives that come with the 12-team playoff. I don't think the sport was broken, personally. I know people would look at this past year and Florida State fans would say, yes, the sport is broken, which I totally understand their thought process. I think it's an imperfect system. I think the 4-team playoff is an imperfect system for sure. But I don't think the 12-team playoff is any less imperfect. I still think there's imperfection as it relates to the 12-team playoff, because team 13, team 14, team 15 are going to be really ticked off because they feel like they should be in. So unless we played a 70-team playoff, like it's imperfect.
Man, it's still teams mad about not getting in the NCAA tournament, and they play 68 teams. So you're never going to make everybody happy.
We debate the bubble more than we debate the 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament. Like, I don't know why, but it's just what we do. So I think we're trending in the right direction. I think the sport is growing. I think the casual audience has grown because I think people can consume this playoff and digest this playoff and understand this playoff better than what we had in the 4-team and in the BCS era before that.
I now want to shift gears to something that's kind of going on right now. We're getting ready for the Super Bowl. Brock Purdy's in the Super Bowl, 7th round pick. You were a 7th round pick, and you know what it's like to go in, because I was a 4th round guy, to be at the bottom of the roster trying to work your way up. What do you see when you see a guy like Brock Purdy, who was Mr. Irrelevant, and you were a 7th round pick, to be able to come in and play with the confidence and leadership that he's been able to do?
Well, I mean, he stepped into a really good situation, right? I think a lot of it, when you are underdrafted like that, or because if you really look at like the talent gap between a 3rd round pick and a 7th round pick, it's not that significant. I mean, okay, you'll have some freak shows that are taken in the top 5. Those guys are kind of in their own world from a talent standpoint. But the gap between a guy that's picked at, say, 40 and a guy that's picked at, say, 250 is not that significant.
No.
Like if you're just going to sit and throw alongside, guys that were drafted, like for instance, like if you were to take, just thinking back to my draft, if you were to take, Christian Ponder and Jake Locker, those guys were drafted, 8th and 10th or 10th and 12th and Blaine Gabbert. All right. Those 3 guys, you're just going to watch them all throw Like right next, you're not going to tell that big of a difference between those guys throwing and Ryan Mallett throwing, who was a 3rd-round pick. I mean, Ryan Mallett was amazing throwing the football, you know? So I think Brock Purdy is an example, and others that have come before him fall in line with this as well. Like Dak Prescott stepped into an incredible situation in Dallas. At the time, best offensive line in football, really good weapons. Like, and he had success, immediate success as a rookie. Brock Purdy stepped into an incredible situation at San Francisco where they have elite playmakers and really versatile weapons like Kittle and Debo. And then the addition of McCaffrey is just taking them to a whole new level. Ayuk's been a really good player for them as well. So I think when you look at those guys, it just further shows talent is great and it's super, super helpful. But it's really more about what's around you. That's really going to determine whether or not you're super successful in the NFL. Like, to me.
Now, you've been in the booth for a lot of very crazy moments, big games, tough games, heartbreaking losses. What's one moment that you've been sitting in the booth and you had to grab your play-by-play guy and be like, oh, my God, I cannot believe this just happened?
There's so many, there are so many crazy finishes. I just called the Sugar Bowl this past year.
Ooh.
That was between Texas and Washington. And the fact that Texas is throwing it into the end zone as the time is about to expire was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I mean, because 500 things had to happen for Texas to have a chance. And sure enough, they did. And Texas, if not for a great play defensively, breaking up a pass in the back of the end zone, Texas might have won the game. But the one that stands out probably as much as any to me, I called Florida State and LSU on Sunday of 2022. And that was just a massive game. Both teams were had expectations for the season. Florida State had been underwhelming for several years leading up to that. So that was a big opportunity for them. It was Brian Kelly's first game at LSU. So a lot of interest there as well. And Florida State is up by 7. Going in, minute and a half, 2 minutes left. It's on about the 2, maybe 3 yard line tops. And they decide to go with a goal line toss sweep pitch. They fumble it. LSU, all they had to do was kneel on it 3 times and kick the field goal. It's a 2-possession game. Game's over. Instead, they fumble it.
Yep.
LSU gets it at the 1 yard line, and they, in about 58 seconds, go straight down the field. Jaden Daniels, his first game at LSU, they score the game-tying touchdown as time expires. And then they line up to kick the extra point to send it to overtime, and the extra point was blocked.
Yep.
So it was the craziest, this game's out of hand. Congrats to Florida State. What a great win. Oh my gosh, they fumbled. Oh, LSU's got a chance. No way they go 99 yards. Oh, they just did. And then I can't believe LSU's going to somehow survive and get this thing into overtime. They played awful all game, and then boom, they missed the extra point. Florida State wins. So that was probably the craziest roller coaster of a game that I've been a part of.
Yeah, this is the question that we ask everybody that comes on here, because to get where you are right now, big time college football broadcaster, having great success in college, you've been to the NFL. What was your biggest leap of faith in your life?
That's a great question. It would have definitely been in 2014. I was under contract with the Cincinnati Bengals, and I thought, I felt pretty good. My career at that point, I'd gotten some playing time in 2012. Didn't do anything of significance, but had gotten and started to kind of get a little bit more comfortable in the NFL. You know what I mean? All right, I'm kind of getting acclimated to the speed. I think I can probably grind out a couple more years. My goal when I got drafted was get your pension, be done. We're good. That was your goal. And then we got that. I was like, all right, this is great. I can keep going. This is going to be awesome. And at the time, was preparing to go to OTAs phase 1, was working out and getting ready and everything like that. And then I get a call from ESPN, and ESPN was getting ready to launch the SEC network. And at that time, I watched a lot of college football. I love college football at that
Yeah.
time, but I wasn't sure, a conference network. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do people watch that? I don't know. Like I wasn't watching, Big Ten Network in New Jersey or Cincinnati, wherever I was living. Like I wasn't watching conference network. So I don't really know. Is this something that people are going to watch? So I had talked with the commissioner of the SEC, Mike Slive, quite a bit. And he had basically said, this is going to be a home run. This is going to be something you want to be a part of. I promise you that you want to be a part of this. And part of me just had that apprehension. I was just nervous. I was like, man, to walk away from the NFL and walk away for a chance to make a couple more rosters. Like, I don't know, man, that seems like that's a leap. Like granted, there's nothing guaranteed in the league. I can go out and get in a car wreck tomorrow. My career's over.
Yeah.
So I can keep pursuing my dream of becoming an NFL quarterback, or I can say, you know what, this is just not in the cards. And I can go set myself up at the ground floor of what could be a very successful operation at the SEC network. And that would be my career for the next 30 years, hopefully. So 40 years. I mean, I was 25 at the time, so hopefully 40 years, right? Yeah. So that was a big leap of faith for me. And it was, now it's so obvious, but at the time it was very difficult. Because the SEC went on to have a remarkable launch and a great training ground for me to learn the industry and to be with young people that were also learning the industry and to have great teammates and to kind of pick their brains and learn more football and learn college, and learn how to broadcast. I think that was really the biggest leap of faith. And now looking back on it, like, I can't believe I struggled with it, but at the time it was a very difficult decision, but one that now, I mean, looking back 10 years ago, it should have been a slam dunk.
Hindsight is 2020. And final question for you for this is, you've traveled to a lot of college cities. Best college city and best place to eat.
The best college town to me is Oxford, Mississippi. That's just my favorite college town. And look, it is a very controversial topic because it's all in what you're into. Yeah. Like, I've always felt like nothing feels as collegey as Oxford, Mississippi,
Yeah.
But I've really grown fond of a lot of different places. I would remove Tuscaloosa because that's obviously near and dear to my heart. I mean, I could navigate Tuscaloosa blindfolded. So that's a little bit like I'd kind of remove them. But I found it pretty cool growing up and having gone to a place that's a college town. It's cool to see the college towns that you hear so much about. Like, I really like Lawrence, Kansas. Now, a lot of people might not think about Lawrence as like a top 5 college town. That's one of my favorites. I think Lawrence, Kansas is awesome. I love Ann Arbor, Michigan. I've really, really enjoyed my time in Starkville, Mississippi. I think that's a great town. I know a lot of people don't think about it. But it's a really cool, really pretty campus, really a neat place to go, really nice people. Athens is on everybody's list.
Yeah.
Athens is really cool. I like Athens a lot. That's kind of, everybody kind of knows them. So I always think kind of the places that don't get the love that they probably deserve.
We got to get you west of the Mississippi more, Greg. It's a lot of good college football going on.
But here's the thing. I've done games in Eugene, multiple. I've been there 3 times. 3 times, been there 3 times, really enjoyed myself. Went to Bepe's, which is one of the best meals ever on the tour. Like, Italian meal at Bepe's, can't miss. Loved it. Had a blast. The thing that's tough for me is every time I do a West Coast game, I'm on a red eye. So it's like I come back feeling awful. So that's probably why I don't think about those places. Like with Oxford, I can drive 2.5 hours and I'm home. So it's a breeze. We did a game in Pullman once. We did a game there. I believe Cal was playing up there. It's Gardner Minshew's year. So that would have been 2018, 2017. So we did a game up there. That was really neat to go to Pullman. Just had never been to the Palouse. I mean, it looks like when you're driving from, whatever city it is, I forget where you fly in, East Washington or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm blanking.
Well, now they have an airport, a full-time airport in Spokane now.
Oh,
But
well, that's good to know. We didn't
yeah.
have that. So we flew into, why am I blanking on this? It's where Gonzaga is.
I'm sorry. Yes. That's what I meant. So Gonzaga's in Spokane, but now in
Spokane.
Pullman, they have a full-time airport.
Yes, but we were flying into Spokane and drove.
Yep.
And it felt like I was like it was like an October-ish. It felt like I was in a scene from Star Wars, like rolling hills, gigantic windmills. Like, this is wild. This looks like a really cool drive. That was a good experience. The other places in the pack that I've enjoyed, I've never done a game in Salt Lake, which is really disappointing.
Hopefully you get that, man. Them fans out in Utah are phenomenal. I mean, they are probably one of the most underrated, because you hear about Oregon and Washington on the West Coast, but them fans in Salt Lake City, Greg, they are incredible.
Yeah, I really want to do. We did a game in Provo, and that was USC against
BYU
against Zach Wilson. And it was awesome. So that was a really cool experience to do a game there. So we've done a lot of really neat games, and like some of your favorites are the places that you wouldn't think about. Like doing a game at Appalachian State. Miami played at Appalachian State. We did that game. It was like 2016. It was wild, man. It was insane. So there's a lot of really cool places that have great tradition. And to be honest with you, like I think they're all cool just kind of for their own reasons. But it's really special to know just how everyone's got their little traditions and stuff. And it's just cool to kind of be able to embrace that culture for a day when you're there calling a game.
Absolutely. And now we're back with Greg McElroy for Wrighster or Wrong. So first thing, Greg McElroy, first one, Greg McElroy, Chase Daniel, and Riley Dodge were all on the same high school team. Is that the best quarterback high school room of all time?
It's pretty sporty. Yeah, I mean, I'd say Wrighster. I don't know, to have two NFL quarterbacks in a quarterback room in high school is pretty wild. I'm sure there's one that's comparable, especially now that IMGs of the world and there's some high school recruiting and stuff. Maybe that's not as uncommon, but that would have been a tough one to beat for sure.
Your co-host on McElroy and Kublik is a former center, so he's a big guy, but at heart, he's a big old teddy bear.
I'd say wrong on that one. Cole is a killer. He does have those, those offensive line teddy bear qualities for sure. But like, he's hardcore, man. Like, he's really hardcore. Now, what's funny is when you see him with his daughter, he's the teddy bear. When you see him with his sons, he's the killer. Like, so he can turn it on and off, but Cole's like one of my best buddies. He's awesome. And I'm really, really fortunate to be able to work with him 15 hours a week.
Final one for you. Wrighster or Wrong, the best college football coaching move of this year was Dan Lanning staying at Oregon, Lance Leopold staying at Kansas, and Kleiman staying at Kansas State.
Probably wrong, because Lanning can't go anywhere because he's too expensive. So that's a good move for Oregon to have all the different loopholes of his contract that only increases the buyout to some exorbitant amount of money. He's a great coach, so I think he's going to do phenomenal there and continue to do phenomenal there. He's already done a great job up to this point. Lance Leipold, I think, has done a great job at Kansas, and Chris Kleiman has done an amazing job at Kansas State. But I don't know how real the interest was at Washington or Texas A&M or some of the other places they were rumored to be maybe considered by. So I'm going to say wrong, because I don't know how likely it was that they were going to get one of those jobs.
Well, he is Greg McElroy. Greg, thanks for coming on the show today.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, he is Greg McElroy. Greg, thanks for coming on the show today.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me.